Well, thanks everybody. Thank you, Sarah, for the introduction, and thank all of you guys for being here. Like Sarah said, we're going to try to finish off this track strong. Thanks everybody for attending Rhythm World this year. I think it's been awesome, and we really appreciate all of you guys. So where we wanted to kind of end things today is contextual automation. And for those of you guys that have been in that analyst chair, it's tough to get enough information in front of you to really quickly make the right decision. So we're going to go into a little bit more detail on what it means to implement contextual automation. So what we're doing here is we'll kind of go through an introduction and then introduce this maturity model, kind of a crawl, walk, run model of where do you get started, how do you move on to the next stage, what does it mean to be at that next stage, like how do we fully automate some of this stuff, and then where can you go from there? If you really want to go do something that's fully custom that nobody else may need to do out there in the world, how might you go about that? There's a lot of value in this, so we're really going to try to hit on, where is this making an improvement in your security organization? How do we know that we're getting better as a security organization in each step along the way? And then we're going to try to leave plenty of time at the end for questions because a lot of this can be pretty customized, can be pretty specific to your environment. So my co-presenter here is Sam Straka, Technical Product Manager at LogRhythm within engineering for the Platform Administration section. So this covers a lot of the things that you guys are probably starting to work with more and more frequently, like our platform APIs. So some pretty powerful stuff in there.
Thanks, Matt. And joining me is Matt Willems. He's the Technical Product Manager. He's been with the company for 7 years, so he's an expert in all things LogRhythm. He is a Jayhawk through and through, so I don't know how many Flatlanders we have in here today, but he's one of you. And then he's done a lot of work on that admin co-pilot team. He actually helped start that team. So he's really familiar and knowledgeable about the challenges that analysts face on a day-to-day basis. So really excited to be up here talking about this stuff. So to get started, what do we want to do with this session? Well, there's two big things that we want you to go away with. Not all information comes in the form of a log. And so what we're trying to do is help you get to that information more quickly and more efficiently. And the upshot is you get to make better decisions faster. So a lot of what our day-to-day work is in a SOC is just making decisions. Is this something I should care about? Is this something I should escalate? Is this something I should go fix because it's false alarming? All that stuff is a decision that you have to make. So getting to a better decision and getting there faster is what this is all about. Yeah. So has anybody here ever done a AD lookup out of LogRhythm? Do you do it pretty regularly? Yeah, that is what I like to use as the easiest example of what we're going to talk about as context today. And so that didn't come in a log. The log you're looking at was somehow related to a user out of your AD account, and LogRhythm helps you pivot into AD to get more information back on that user. So just so you're, context is one of those words that can mean anything. But in our context, that's what we're talking about. Extra information that you're bringing into the SIM to help you make a decision and what to do next.
And a handful of these tools inside of LogRhythm have been around for a long time, like through the client console. Most of you guys know you can do like ping and traceroute and whois lookups from the console, that stuff that we've ported to the web. And I think that's exactly right. Like that's really the foundation of where we're trying to bring in contextual information. These tools that have been around forever. And what we want to talk about is how we're going to be extending these into the future to hit some of the more complicated sources of that data.
Exactly. So let's jump into some practical examples here, starting with me, with the easy stuff, obviously. So, pop quiz, where do you go to get any sort of information on LogRhythm? If you don't know this by now, you probably haven't been in Rhythm World. Community, thank you very much. Great, obviously we have to plug it. That's where we're putting everything these days. So if you want more information about third-party contextualize or anything we're talking about here, check it out on the community. Second question in the pop quiz. You guys ready? Who knows what this event ID means? Who knows? Anybody? Nobody's going to Google it? Really? No.
So if you wanted to know what this event ID means, where would you go?
Google to know which log source is coming
It's from a Windows event log.
Oh, it's a Windows.
Alternate Windows security, that's a great one, absolutely. So, you know, we all need a little bit more work on our vendor ID message recognition, that's okay. That's why we're introducing a new feature called third-party contextualize, or contextualized actions is how you're gonna see it in the web console. And this question comes up all the time. I mean, this ID in the mega grid doesn't mean a whole lot to anybody. It may have a common event associated with it, but you know, if you're really interested in what that ID stands for, 0036 isn't really telling you much. So, you know, those of us who are familiar would go to Ultimate Windows Security because Randy Franklin Smith has got basically every ID known to man, and it's got great information there. But you know, what are you doing in that situation? You're going out, you're copying the string, you're going to Ultimate Windows Security, finding the search box, pasting it in there, hitting go. That's annoying. It's just annoying. You've got better stuff to be doing.
It's a step in the workflow that you should be able to automate.
So this tool is going to help you just pivot straight out of the mega grid right into that search with one click. So how does it work? First of all, if you're in your web console and you're an admin, you're going to find this contextualized actions section on your admin menu. Jump in there and you'll see a grid, but you can also just create a new contextualized action. And essentially what this is it's a very simple search string replacement. So we're going to have you put in the resource you're trying to get to. In my example, we're doing a SANS ISC IP lookup, and we'll work through how that looks. You just want to title it. This is a great piece of information to give to somebody who's junior. For example, someone who's just starting at the organization, and instead of sitting down and doing the obligatory, these are the bookmarks you need to add to your Chrome browser, you can just make sure and point them right here and say, these are the resources you're going to need when you're digging through our logs. So start with the description so that the new person knows exactly what they're working with. And then you're going to have to pick fields that will initiate this search. So in our example, we're using IPs. You're not going to need, for example, the result field to go do an IP pivot. So we're going through and picking hosts and all the IP metadata fields that are available in the mega grid.
It just really helps you narrow down kind of the scope of information you're going to be looking at, because you don't have to see all of the configured actions. If you have a hash that you want to look up, you can pretty much nail it down to, all right, I'm going to look it up in virus total. I'm going to look it up in a threat database. I don't need to see all of the things that can do like the Internet Storage Center lookup or an errand lookup or Ultimate Windows Security or something like that. So you're only going to see the actions that are relevant for what you're looking at.
Exactly. So next, and this is the important part, is you're just going to go ahead and grab the URL when you're running a search. The easiest way that I do this is just go to the website you're trying to search, type in anything, and hit go, and that string that you search for will appear in the URL. All you have to do is grab that, replace it with a %T, and we'll know that's where to sub in whatever that field is in the mega grid into that search string. We allow you to access sites behind an API, so you can throw an API key in here if you have a paid service that you want to go reference. And then this is part of our secure object infrastructure in LogRhythm, so you can limit who has access to see it, et cetera, et cetera. So at this point, what do we got? I've found an IP in the mega grid that I'm interested in for whatever reason. As soon as I click on it, you'll see in the inspector these additional contextualized actions, and I can just see, there's only one that's applicable to IPs. You hit go, and it's going to take you right to the Internet Storm Center with your entry already populated. This is just to make you faster. It's you trying to get to a decision about this log, about this IP. Don't waste your time clicking through. Go get that information as quickly as possible. Get that context into your decision-making process. And so, what are some great use cases here? Google, obviously. SANS, ISC, virus total, and really anything you can think of that's accessible via search. So, any questions on the contextual actions? Yeah.
What version is it going to be in?
That's in 7.4.
Excellent.
So if you don't recognize it yet,
Oh,
you
and a
have
follow-up, when is 7.4?
soon.
Really soon.
Really soon.
Soon on a quantum level or soon on a geologic level?
So we're in between.
Before you retire. Any other questions? Yeah.
What if you have an authentication in the way?
And authentication?
So it depends a little bit on how the site is constructed. I built a few of these that do rely on being authenticated. I think ThreatGrid allows for this. You have to authenticate. And honestly, what happened is it builds a URL. You click on it. It drops you on the login page. You fill in information, and it takes you to the result. So you'd still have to log in. We've got the API key access there. If they allow for passing the API key in the URL,
Okay.
then that'll autofill in and it'll take you straight to the results. There definitely are some sites where that's not going to be the complete solution, and that's really where we're going to lean into contextual smart response. That's probably better suited to a more powerful tool.
Yeah, I was just thinking internal tools that ask you to authenticate.
Absolutely, yeah. That brings up a great point right there. Like this is absolutely usable for internal resources as well, because it's just from the perspective of the browser. We're just opening a URL. So if there's something internal that you can leverage, it would work.
Great. So let's go to the next level. This is really basic. Anybody can set this up. I would encourage you, once you get on 7.4, to go try this. So let's talk about SmartResponse.
Yeah. All right. So another quick show of hands. How many of you guys are using SmartResponse today? Probably about half the room. Okay, that's great. So SmartResponse is pretty flexible. SmartResponse it's right there in the name. This is traditionally thought of as something that is used for remediation, to respond to a threat, disable a user account, add a rule to a firewall, these types of actions. But it's really useful for doing a lot more than that. It's useful for being able to do examples exactly like what you're talking about of, hey, I need to authenticate to this system, or this resource is behind an API. It's not necessarily something that I can capture in a tool like case management. So doing this through contextual smart response rather than the additional contextualize or through a manual workflow. Now, all of a sudden, I get case management integration. So I can go bring some results back from an API or from a third-party site and drop those directly into the case that I'm actively working. Now, some of you guys are definitely familiar and probably were at the Smart Response presentation during the breakout sessions that Bruce and I did yesterday. Some of this will be a little bit of a review, but it's definitely nice to reinforce. One Smart Response plugin can have multiple actions. This is really critical to keep in mind because in a lot of cases, you'll have one resource that should have both contextual actions and remediation actions. And probably the easiest case to think about is working with user accounts in either an IAM platform or even something like Active Directory. Active Directory can provide you a lot of really valuable information about that user account. What groups do they have permission to? What domains are they actually attached to? Tons of stuff. You can also use it to actually disable a user account or perform other administration actions on that user account. So it's important to remember that one plugin can do lots of different things. You don't necessarily need to use all of it in order to get value out of it.
Yeah, Matt, just to jump in there, I think one of the big pushbacks we get with Smart Response is, that automation scares my company.
Yeah.
They're not going to let us go disable stuff automatically. It's just not an option. And so what we really wanted to reinforce today is that don't let it scare you off the whole feature, because you can use and leverage Smart Response to get great information into your analyst's hands without actually taking any remedial action or automated disabling, adding, fire, nothing like that. You can just use it to get data back, and it's extremely powerful. So remember that, and nothing else from the Smart Response section is that you can make it work in your environment even if traditional remediation isn't available in your situation.
Yeah, that's a great point. I mean, just being able to use this to speed up that time to detect and time to respond workflow, it has a ton of value. So kind of the same question that we started with Contextualize, where are these plugins coming from? Where are you going to get these? So LogRhythm Engineering actually has a dedicated Smart Response team now. So we're building a lot of this content, and we're building it based on your input. There are a lot of third-party resources out there that we're building integrations with. I mean, we've been releasing typically 1 or 2 of these a week for the last 6 weeks or something. So if you haven't been on Community looking at the shareables section, I highly recommend it because all of the engineering content around SmartResponse is going up there. Maybe another quick show of hands. How many of you guys in the room have some internal resource, some either fully internal, a third-party site you use, technology in your environment that you could be getting data back from using something like SmartResponse, but you don't have an integration for it today? That should be just about everybody. So yeah, hopefully we're going to build some of that, but what I really highly recommend, use some of the ideation features that we're putting on Community, post in the SmartResponse section of Community. As the TPM for the SmartResponse team, I'm looking at that feedback on a daily basis for where we should be going there. So that's the engineering team. Our own internal threat research team also is building SmartResponse content. Some of that's being leveraged by our own internal security team. Those of you guys that are familiar with Pi, I mean, we've said it a million times, but the phishing automation that we released, that was actually kind of a collaboration in a hackathon between engineering and labs that they started implementing on the CISO side, on the internal security side, and really fleshed it out into what it is today. Really, really powerful. And so that leads directly into like CISO. Our own internal groups are building these and using them and refining them on a day-to-day basis. And then of course the fourth piece is you guys. You know, there's a lot of community members out there that are building SmartResponse. I see a handful of you guys in the room already that are building this content and publishing it on Community. And this isn't a one-way street. You know, a lot of this stuff is published on GitHub. Pi, the SmartResponse for Pi is actually on GitHub. You guys can go start playing with it, you know, branch off of there and say, all right, I need to build this, but to work with, you know, G Suite or work with Office 365 or, you know, work with some of these other online platforms. You can start making those changes and you know, make pull requests back to the original plugin.
Just to jump in, Matt, I love this slide because it not only helps you figure out where this data is coming from, but I like to see that it shows our dedication and our investment in this automation content. As you know, we like to call ourselves a next-gen SIM, and I think it's stuff like this that takes us out of being just a log management tool and into that next-gen category. So I'm really excited to see all the different people that are invested in this.
Yeah, absolutely. And you know, we had the question before about, well, what version is the additional contextualized actions available in? That's going to be in 7.4. SmartResponse has been there for years. You know, everybody in the room can take advantage of this content today. You could go back to your own deployment and hit Community, download some of these plugins, and start using them right now. So what does it actually look like to import a SmartResponse plugin and start using it? It's really easy. Through the client console, you just open up the SmartResponse plugin manager from that tools menu, accept the license agreement, get the thing imported, and it's immediately available in the web console to run those ad hoc actions if that's what you're trying to do. It'll also display all of the plugins that you have enabled and give you a little bit of detail on the parameters that you might have to pass in order to start using it. Like what content's available to come back from it usually. The ad hoc execution through the web is really not that much more difficult than the additional contextualized actions that Sam already described. You know, you just pick from that drop-down menu, what plugin am I interested in? Or if you're not sure, then you can actually just open up the actions menu and say, all right, I have an IP address, what can I go do with it? Things like virus total are going to show up in that menu. You usually have to fill in a little bit of information. It'll auto-populate the things that it can. So it'll show you the data from the log row that you have selected. But the nice thing here is you can also fill those in yourself. So if you just see something in threat hunting, you see something in a log that maybe didn't get parsed out of that log. Maybe it's a hash value that we haven't updated an MPE rule to actually parse out that hash value. It's a quick copy and paste to drop that into the SmartResponse configuration. You usually have to fill in some credentials, but that's going to depend on the particular action that you're executing. And the great thing is, once you do that, it's just going to open up a new tab in your browser and display the result. And it gives you a button right there to go ahead and add that to case management. The second way you can do this is tied to an alarm. So the nice thing is, this can be fully automated process. So if you tie this to an alarm, it automatically runs as soon as that alarm fires, and then all the result from that SmartResponse action is added as metadata to the alarm. So this is really powerful for really minimizing, for lowering that time to detect and time to respond, because now an analyst has to do zero work in order to get that contextual information back. You know, if you've got something that's firing through an attack on your DMZ, on your gateway firewall, you know, you have that alarm show up, it automatically looks up that IP address in VirusTotal and can tell you, hey, yeah, this is a bad actor. This is something you could go ahead and block. And if you have it configured, it can then go ahead and take that blocking action for you if you want. So
one of my favorite examples for automation on this is vulnerability scanners.
Yeah.
So you get an alarm fired and it's got information about a host. Why don't you just go automate checking against your vulnerability scanner to see the last time it was scanned and scan results. It's not going to be something that necessarily comes in a log, but you can have that information at your fingertips every time an alarm like that fires by easily automating it through SmartResponse.
Absolutely. And I think it's worth highlighting a couple of the kind of more elaborate use cases that you can do with SmartResponse. So the example we have on the screen is kind of an extension of SmartResponse where you can use multiple actions with an approval workflow. So let's say we have that example from the beginning of, you know, I have an alarm that's going to fire on a brute force attack or something like that. I can have a fully automated action to go hit AD and bring back the contextual information about that account, and then a second action configured with approval to disable the user account. So the only thing that's happening automatically with full automation is getting the contextual information. So when this alarm fires, an analyst can open up the alarm details, see what user was impacted, review the information about that account, and then choose to approve or deny disabling the user account. So it's another way to build in some of this automation, but having the safety net of, well, a human still has to have eyes on it for any of the you know, remediation action to actually take effect. And then, you know, the next step in SmartResponse, if you're really starting to get into some corner use cases that we may not have the expertise to go build because we're not familiar enough with your environment, is really going to get into tuning, or I guess, modifying SmartResponse content for your own needs, or building some of these completely from scratch. So what might that look like? Well, the nice thing is you can take any SmartResponse plugin that's out there, anything off of community, whether we've published it or it came from anywhere else, rename that LPI file to, it's just a gzip tar file, so you rename it to TGZ, and all of a sudden you can extract it and look at all of the contents. So if you need to go modify that script to do anything custom, sometimes this is just hard coding some of the configuration stuff. If you've got an internal resource that you're always going to hit, well then you can just hard code those parameters so that you don't have to you know, populate it every time or give information to an analyst, an API key that you may not want to expose. It's a great way to do it. The other piece there is this actions.xml file. Once again, we talked about it in a little more detail in the SmartResponse breakout session. But that XML file really is the configuration that maps the information that you're filling in the web console or mapping from alarms into parameters that get passed into the script file itself. This is not the most up-to-date presentation. Okay, well, we're going to send, no, that's all right. We're going to send out some updated slides because we actually have an example that we've put together on querying an asset management database. So the example that we go through in the other slide deck is basically, you may have a SQL table that you've used to tie an old, you know, you've made an acquisition, you've got old assets, you've got a new naming schema, and it's really helpful for an analyst to be able to cross-query those, to say, all right, I see this IP address, I don't remember what host that was in the old naming scheme. So the place that we would usually start with this is, all right, I'm going to go write a SQL script that I can use to query that information. So we've got examples in there that you'll be able to reference on what does it look like to actually write that SQL script. You probably, if you're not yourselves, you probably have people on site that are pretty familiar with doing this kind of thing, writing any other script to query this information. The second piece, once you have a SQL script, is start getting into PowerShell or into your favorite scripting language. Python works just as well. You can do this through pretty much anything you do too. And then we'll go through like parameterizing these things because we need to be able to pass host information in this case from something you're going to fill in the web console or a host that you've identified through an investigation, and pass that IP address or host name or asset name into this SQL script. So we started to parameterize the script itself. And then really all it takes is building out this actions.xml, the file you see on the right, you'll be able to see in a lot more detail later, is mapping those parameters in the script that get passed into SQL from an alarm field or from something you spot in the web console. Beyond that, it's really just a matter of taking those files and adding them in the client console through the SmartResponse plugin manager, and it'll spit out that LPI file for you. So the easiest way to do this is start with an LPI file, unpack it, make the changes you need to make, even if you're fully replacing whatever script is in there in those weak source files, and then repackage it into an LPI file. The last place that really needs to go is community.
Awesome. So I think, we're wrapping it up a little early, so I think it might be possible to, when we're taking questions, to get that demo of the customization pulled up. But to really wrap up our message here, what we're trying to convey today is that there's a lot of information out there available to you. LogRhythm deals primarily with logs and log data, but our mission is to get the information in front of you, whether that's through a log or through some other contextual source, which is going to give you the information you need to make a great decision. So whatever you saw today, use that as as an inspiration to go out and figure out how you can get more information. One thing I like to do is go look at your analysts, go look at what your own process is, and figure out where you're going outside of the SIM, and what third-party tools you're using that aren't integrated in. And I would challenge you, you can probably integrate it into LogRhythm.
Yeah, the other point that I kind of want to wrap up on is, there's really no better way to reduce the time to detect and time to respond than automation. In a lot of cases, you can reduce this stuff to zero. The other big benefit of doing some of this is we're building consistency. When you're using case management, you're starting to use playbooks, you know that all of your analysts are taking the same actions. We're working through a consistent playbook, so your metrics start to become really meaningful. So you can track changes in your case metrics, using the built-in metrics, using the metrics app, and watch the time to respond actually decline. And so you're able to not just implement this stuff, but prove that it's working. The other big benefit of doing that is you're going to start to know, all right, on average, it takes us this long to respond to a phishing email when someone's compromised, or to respond to other types of attacks. It's really, really useful for planning out headcount for the future. Once you're starting to see, all right, phishing is starting to trend up. This is a really costly workflow for us to go through because it requires a lot of hands-on remediation. Well, then you have a couple of options. You can say, all right, well, I know what our averages are. If our caseload doubles around phishing, I'm going to have to go after headcount. Or I'm going to have to invest in some automation, start to look at bringing in Pi, and watch the time required to respond to those cases trend downward. So you can really get a lot of value out of this, not just in the security space, but in building out your security organization and investing in the people and tools and automation to really make a really tight, efficient workflow.
Absolutely. So with that, let's open it up for some questions, and then I think we'll be able to we'll pull up our advanced example here in a minute. Brian.
So a couple questions. There was limitations of previous versions on size, or size, and then it wouldn't return. What is the current limitation on size for SmartResponse?
The limitation that, if I understand correctly, you're talking about is around the result that's coming back from SmartResponse. I want to say it's 2,000 characters. And there definitely are APIs out there that if you're not running a specific enough query, you'll get more than that back.
Right.
If you guys are running into that consistently, it's a great topic for community. Brian is.
And then secondly, is there any work plan to allow us to format the output in some, nice, pretty, pass JSON or something?
Yeah, that's another great question. So I think both of those are things that are on the roadmap. We definitely want to make sure that any information you're pulling back from an API, we're providing a space to display it. And I do have some work on the roadmap to look at properly formatting the output. So we could do something like take a JSON response and display it in fields, in like friendly fields in the web console. Down the road, that's also something that we want to wire up directly into case management for doing things like adding tags. You know, if you query virus total and it comes back with a particular type of identification, automatically adding some of those as tags is workflow that we want to get built in.
And then feed that into other.
You got it. Yeah, great question. Yeah. But you should pitch the microphone through this here.
What about consideration of contextualization on log ingestion?
Contextualization on log ingestion. There's a lot of consideration for that. Some of that probably goes outside of the additional contextualized actions and SmartResponse. But you're absolutely right. This is, I think Bruce is doing a breakout session this afternoon on some of the work we're doing around our data collector in the next version. That's actually part of the requirement that we've built into that is the ability to have a spot in the pipeline where we could find logs that match some criteria and say, all right, this is an external IP address, not an internal IP, so go do a geolocation lookup. So go find the ASN that IP maps to, or the range. You have a URL, all right, give me the FQDN and the host name and TLD on top of that. Picking up base 64 encoded stuff and automating, all right, go ahead and decode that and add it as metadata to the log. I mean, there's as many examples there as you could probably imagine. So yeah, that's absolutely part of the requirement for the next gen data collector.
Okay.
Cool, great question.
So I have two, it's kind of more feedback, but getting a response on it. So I have regular SmartResponse. I'm a JTech in the community, so I publish out smart responses. Where you're doing the certification program,
Yeah.
is that going to open up where third parties can have their smart responses certified through you guys?
Definitely. So it's an awesome question. Our engineering team is publishing certified content today, and part of their mission is to take community content or content developed by some of our integration points and certify that so that LogRhythm has said, yeah, this isn't going to break your system, you're fine. The best thing that I can say there is make sure it's posted on community so that we get some field feedback and make sure it's well, I'll step back for 1 second. Part of the issue that we run into with the certification process is QA. If you're integrating with something that we don't have access to from a development standpoint, it's hard for us to run any QA on it. So we really rely on you guys to say, yeah, we've vetted this. We can do the code review and go, yeah, this is up to our standards. But then it's really something we're relying on community for to be able to say, and it also works the way we would expect it to. So we're trying to do as much of that review process as possible. So if this is something you're interested in, make sure it's posted on community. Drop me a message or put something in that community post that says, yeah, I'd like to see about getting this LogRhythm certified. And we'll probably have a conversation and say, cool, is this an open source tool that we can go ahead and download and install and fully certify ourselves? Or can we find some other people that are using it to kind of help us field certify it? Cool, great question.
The second one is, so you showed a little trick to extracting the LTI. Didn't know that's nice. Is there any chance that you're going to do an actual GitHub repo similar to Pi, where the code for them will be openly accessible for review and updates to go through an official channel or code review?
That's a really good question. That one probably goes a little bit above my head because there's some open source code considerations there that it's something that we have done in the past for certain types of tools like Pi. At least some of the other SmartResponse content that we have out there fits that category. So I would cautiously say yes, I think we'll be doing more of that. Yeah, it's an awesome question. The other thing that we're going to try to do that you guys might find interesting is we're actually working on a plugin for VS Code to help automate some of the process of building SmartResponse. So you do things like call a function in VS Code to build out a skeleton plugin, drop in a sample actions XML, a sample script, and then additional functions to say, all right, I need to add a new action to my actions XML configuration, and it'll just add that XML to the log and some things like that. It actually has the build process built in too.
Questions, Michael?
Yeah.
One of the items on the agenda is putting data back in the LogRhythm. And you had mentioned that there was, I guess, a way if you unbasically for something, you can add that back in the log as metadata. Can you talk a little bit more about how that's going to work and when you think that's going to be available?
Short answer is probably no. I probably can't talk about that too much. So the function that you'd be talking about is really part of the, I'm going to keep using the term next-gen data collector because that's how we've been referring to it internally. I don't know if Sam has like exactly what we're going to be calling that, but the new data collector that we're working on, it would be functionality built in there, and I really don't want to speak over Bruce as far as those capabilities or exactly how that would work, but that's where that would tie in. I do know that what they're part of what they're trying to do there is make it backwards compatible. So you wouldn't necessarily, some of this is probably not possible in a backwards compatible scenario, but some of it certainly is as far as, we can write out a second log and consume that and then a pivot search would bring that back up. So there's some possibilities there for sure.
Brian, you got one?
UTF-8 is the storage place for the response. UTF-8, does that support that?
Probably not.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, yeah, we'll talk about that. That's good feedback.
Good feedback, Brian.
Yeah. I can't say that I've tried it, but that's a good question.
With the smart responses, is there a way that we can add, once the smart response has been installed, like for example, instead of recoding and changing and modifying, that we don't have to go through the interesting process of re-importing it and trying to get it to work again, to change the OID and have to do it several times?
All right, super good question. So I'm going to throw two things out there that really help with the smart response development process. So one is, there's a concept that's discussed some on the community that I think they've been calling shims. Basically what you're doing is passing an arbitrary string of parameters that's configured in SmartResponse to another script. So you're actually doing the development work on this script that just lives on that box. And what the SmartResponse is really doing is just calling it and dumping in a bunch of parameters.
Yeah, funny story, that's Rouse.
Yeah, that's a really good one. And that's an awesome way to get started. I always like to throw out the cautionary flag that this is just such a perfect scenario for arbitrary code execution that I can't even stress that enough. For development, it's fantastic. So that's probably the place I would start. The second one is, as you're building these, as long as the GUID doesn't change and you're incrementing the version number, it will import on top. There are some bugs in the past around that I think we've got cleaned up now as far as 7.4 at least, probably 7.3.5 as well, that we can get into detail on those if we need to. That should make that import process pretty transparent. And as long as you're modifying an action to add or remap parameters, when you're adding actions, you really shouldn't have any trouble just importing on top of the old one. It's definitely a burden when you have to recompile or repackage the plugin every time. And that's why the shims are a really nice place to start, because you can just build one and then keep developing against that.
Secondary to all of that, with contextualization and smart response,
Yeah.
are both kind of two hands of the same operation, where you're trying to get the information and take an action.
Yeah.
And all of this kind of ties into case management,
Yeah.
but none of it really smoothly ties into each other. As far as being able to fluidly say, I want to reach out to a RESTful API, get information, bring it back in, take an action off of that and put that back in, and all of this with a side of branching logic. Is that on the near-term roadmap, or is that kind of just a sort of pipe dream that maybe once admin APIs are fully accessible, we can
I would say it crosses all of those categories. I mean, there is some pretty smooth workflow today in, if you execute a smart response action and you add that to a case, you're going to get the result right there. That's already case management, so that's definitely there today. Beyond that, yeah, this is eventually going to integrate with playbooks. It's absolutely on the roadmap. So being able to do branching logic in playbooks so that if I look at the result of a smart response and the threat score is below a certain threshold, then we can close it, or we can go through this workflow. If it's above a certain threshold, then we're going to go down here and we're going to execute a new smart response. Yeah, some of that functionality, executing searches automatically and adding the results to case as evidence, using some of that data to then execute smart response in an automated fashion, all definitely on the roadmap. Yeah, and you'll see it phased in over time for sure. It's a huge development task. But great question.
Rob, come to you.
Don't do it, it's a trap.
So Rob, just to comment on what you said, and I think somebody else had a question about like the size of the response. So
Yeah.
what I've started doing is like for the virus total smart response, instead of leaving that in the client console or the web console, I let that trigger automatically, and then I deliver the results in email, and just like in a HTML format table to the same group that's receiving the alarm in general.
Yeah.
So they don't actually have to go anywhere, they get the alarm, and then they have another email that has the smart response data, and you're not limited to, a certain number of characters or anything like that, and you can easily drop that email straight into a case.
Yeah, absolutely. And actually, I'll extend that one step further. With the case API, you can also just take the case ID and add that as evidence to the case directly. So you can hit that case API and not have to go through the email or evidence file intermediary. If you're really ambitious, the other thing you can do is take apart Pi, because that has some crazy examples of things like, we're going to build a directory structure based on the alarm ID or the case ID, drop things into that folder, and then make a subsequent API call to pull those all back into the same case. Or in the case of Pi, you can take some subsequent actions automatically based on previous results. So it's kind of an interesting workaround for chaining SmartResponse, where we're doing it all inside of one plugin, and it's just writing out and then reading the contents back in. There's a lot you can do there. Since, we kind of talked about it before, but SmartResponse is just a command line. You're just feeding data into a command line script. So anything that you can write from the command line, we can automate.
Great. Any other questions?
More of a statement, if you write those files down, make sure you do that dynamic based on the alarm. Otherwise, you'll overwrite it right into that problem.
Yep, that's a great example. Yeah, sometimes I've seen patterns of writing those up using a GUID, so they're just not going to collide. But then you have to hold that GUID in memory. You have to know how to reference it again. Using something like the case ID or the alarm ID is another really nice pattern to use. Yeah.
Great. Well, Matt and I are going to hang around. We will post these up on the community as well. We would love your feedback on our session today. If you know how to do that, it's an app. We'd love to hear what you have to think, what we could do better for next year. And so yeah, we'll probably at least send you to lunch a little early. But if you have a particular question or you want to talk more about the advanced SmartResponse stuff, we'd love to just hang around and answer those up at the front.
Yeah, we'll be here. And the slide deck that we're going to post on community or through the app will definitely have the full example that we intended to go through.
Yeah. I'll also say before everybody leaves too, if you're on our email list, if you get emails like for tips and tricks webinars and that type of thing, once 7.4 is out and is in GA, you will receive an email leading you straight to where that download is and leading you to community. So once that is out, so you can take advantage of great things like this contextual automation, you should get an email. And if you're not on that email list, come see me or anybody that's wearing the LogRhythm shirt who will help you make sure that you get that email.
Great, thanks everybody.
Yeah, if you didn't get scanned, go see Rob back. Thanks, guys.